后花园线上的朋友们，大家晚上好，欢迎在周一的晚上收看呢由建筑会主办播出的公开课系列，我是今天的主持人 Lily。今天直播的主题呢是中高度密度的开发项目中防火防噪的知识，以及防火墙材料的选择。让我们欢迎今天的嘉宾，由 Kiwi 领先防火墙供应商 Resene Construction 的总经理 Mike Oates。Please say hi to the audience, Mike.
Hi everyone.
以及我们来自 ZYJ Construction 的 Director 之一 Jerry Dai， 也请您跟大家打招呼。
Hi everyone， 大家晚上好。
联排或者是小型公寓中非常重要的一部分，防火墙。顾名思义呢，就是一堵在两个连接的房屋中起到防火作用的分隔墙。这个墙同时也能够保证隔音，因此呢，选择一个靠谱的产品是保证火灾安全和私密性的很重要的因素之一。因为防火墙在项目中占有举足轻重的分量，产品的选择和安装也是在写 Building Consent 申请时就必须决定好的，未经许可不可以随意的替换。而对我们广大的业主朋友来说，房屋的高安全和强大的噪音阻隔不仅能大大提高住房的舒心程度，也能够降低危险发生的可能性。因此，不管您是业内的人士还是屋主朋友，希望今天的公开课都能让您对防火墙的重要性和如何选择有一定的了解。在今天公开课的前30分钟，麦克会给大家带来以下几点内容的分享，包括为何噪音和火灾的防治在项目建设过程中常是被重点考虑的因素，联排防火墙的合规、噪音传播阻隔，以及中高密度住宅开发的防火和噪音测试。然后 Jerry 将会以项目为实例，现身说法，具体去讲解防火墙材料的使用以及安装。在今天后半段的公开课，他将会用10到15分钟的时间为大家展示位于 Greenfield 他们联排项目的具体细节。最后的最后，还是要提醒大家，一定要记得使用公开课详情的2维码扫码进群，参与直播结束后群内的抽奖环节。第一位正确回答问题的朋友即可获得价值$100的后花园生鲜达代金券1张。今天的问题呢，就是 During the fire test, what are the average temperature across the non-fire side of the test wall? 在防火系数的测试中，在没有着火的那一侧，平均的温度是多少？答案呢，就请大家在今天的公开课里面自己去发掘吧。现在也请正在收看课程的观众朋友们单击嘉宾的窗口，使其成为大的屏幕，方便您来观看 PPT。如果直播过程中 PPT 的显示不全，您可以通过屏幕右上角的胶片水印来进行调整。Okay, now Mike, if you're ready, please start sharing your presentation slides with all the audience and take over from here. Thank you.
Everyone, you can see the first slide?
Yeah. Pretty good.
Very good. This evening, we are going to be talking about a very important part of multi-unit residential development. It's a critical component for when you're building multiple unit developments, multiple units that are connected to one another. And it's a central barrier intertenancy walling system. I want to show you a quick video to give you a quick snapshot of what we'll be discussing this evening.
Hi there, Peter Wolfkamp, resident builder, and today I've come out to site to have a look at some of the new innovations from Resene Construction Systems. If you look around, you can see that this type of multi-dwelling construction is going to become more and more commonplace, and a critical part of building right next to each other is protecting one dwelling from the other. And in this instance, the central barrier intertenancy system is a critical element of how we're going to be building in the future. This system is beautiful in its simplicity. So there are essentially 4 elements. There is the Integra AAC panel, the mortar, the clips, and the screws. Systems like this are designed for 2 important functions. One is their fire rating, the other is their acoustic performance. This system here has been independently tested by brands in terms of its fire rating and has achieved a minimum 2-hour fire protection. The other critical element is its acoustic performance. Testing done at Auckland University has indicated that this system achieves an STC rating of 64 and can achieve a rating of up to 67. That far exceeds the minimum requirements of the building code, which is an STC rating of 55. It's great to see this project nearing completion, and it's really good to know that the critical functions of fire protection and acoustic isolation achieved by the Resene Construction System's central barrier intertenancy system will serve these owners for years to come. For more information, go to reseneconstruction.co.nz.
I'll just get into the next slide. So as Peter mentioned in that video, there's two key components of these walling systems, and that is fire and noise, and the ability of these walling systems to resist both fire and noise. The most common thing that you're trying to resist on a day-to-day basis is the noise from your next-door neighbour. I don't think people experience fires in their next-door neighbour's property every day of the week, but the noise is the most common one. And these two factors are the key driver of the system. And trust me, you don't want to be this guy, living next door to a noisy neighbour and having a bad acoustic system separating you. The New Zealand Building Code has some minimum requirements for these types of walls. They must be sound rated above 55 STC. STC is sound transmission class. They must be fire rated to a minimum of 30 minutes and a maximum of 120 minutes. These requirements, depending on, you have a 30-minute, a 60-minute, a 90-minute, and 120-minute firewalling system. It depends on the requirements of the particular dwellings. For our system, we have a minimum of 120 minutes or 2 hours protection from fire. They must maintain structural integrity. So if there is a fire next door and you're living next door to on the non-fire side, you don't want your wall falling over. So they must maintain structural integrity and protection. The New Zealand Building Code, in terms of acoustics, relates to G6 of the Building Code. And it sets the limits for airborne sound, which is through the wall that we're dealing with today, and also for impact sound. Now, impact sound we're not going to be discussing today because that deals with flooring systems. So airborne sound, or STC, and sound transmission class, noise originating in the air. And that can be from people talking, music, appliances, general living. Impact sound, as I mentioned earlier, deals with movement and sound, blows or vibration, such as footsteps, moving furniture, knocking plumbing inside the wall and inside the flooring systems. There's nothing worse than a flooring system when you're walking upstairs and you can hear every footstep. They also need to be aware, when we're dealing with acoustics, the activities of other residents, such as loud conversations, televisions, loud music, plumbing systems, doors opening and closing, appliance noises. We also have to consider heating and air conditioning, ventilation systems, building services such as lifts and vertical pipes. For example, you don't want to hear someone flushing the toilet on the 3rd floor and you hear it on the ground floor. We also consider exterior pedestrian and vehicle traffic and foot noise. So as I mentioned, the sound transmission class, it's a single number system. So when you look at the design of your project, it will never be less than 55. It will always be minimum 55. If you see a number that's less than 55 for an intertenancy wall, you have a bad acoustic engineer. The minimum number you should see is always 55. With our standard system, the minimum is 64. So what that means is you have some redundancy. So you have a higher ability to resist acoustic noise and transmission into the neighboring property. It is based on typical speech, and as we noted earlier, washing dishes, walking around, medium music. It won't deal if you're if your teenagers love drum and bass and they love it turned up really loud. It's not going to deal with that type of acoustic vibration. Equally, if you love violin concertos, that's a really high frequency and it won't deal with that. There will be some acoustic transmission, irrespective of how good the walling system is. All right. So STC is measured in a laboratory, an acoustic laboratory. We tested ours at Auckland University Acoustics Lab. Sometimes when you'll have an STC and you'll also may see an RW. Now, this is a weighted sound reduction index. Now, what that means is that it's an acoustic engineer's terminology to give them some redundancy. So an RW will be generally recorded as a lower number. So, for example, in our 64 STC system, that will be recorded as a 63 or a 62, but it still exceeds the requirements of the building code by some 7 points. It also gives acoustic engineers, when they're building up different systems, gibboard, plasterboard will have a rating, timber framing, different insulation, different materials they can build up to get an approximate solution for an individual project. One of the most important ones when you were designing an acoustic walling system is flanking transmission. So flanking transmission is the ability of noise around the end of the wall to travel around and into the next tenancy. So we have specifications and requirements to achieve elimination of flanking noise. The building code allows for a 5-point leeway. So you can achieve a 50 within the lab, but they will actually record that as a 55. They have tolerance around that. Now, when we test the system, this is the lab at Auckland University. Now, this hole you see here in the wall is where we build our test wall. And on this side here, you have speakers, and this cone up here, that spins around slowly, and it bounces noise all over all the different wall surfaces. And in this room here, this is microphones, and we try to collect any sound that transfers from this side into this side. All right. Just for interest's sake, this is the area where they test flooring systems. These walls in this test facility are nearly 900 millimeters of thick solid concrete. There is no external noise entering this space. So in the previous slide, this hole here, we then build our walling system. So we build the framing, we put in there the Integra lightweight concrete panel, the brackets, the mortar. This is how it would look if we were looking down from the top of the wall. This would be where the sound is, and this is where the microphones are, collecting the sound. We have our acoustic brackets and fire-rated brackets connected to your timber framing or your structure. Then we have our Integra lightweight concrete panel, and then we have the next tenancy's framing and the bracket system connected to that as well. These brackets are very important. In the acoustic sense, we have silicon sleeves on them, which act like acoustic dampeners. So we try to dampen any vibration through the wall connecting to the framing. Once we've installed the framing and the panel, we then put insulation into the wall. It doesn't matter what type of insulation you use, as long as it's a thermal rated insulation to give you good thermal performance, and that will give you additional benefit for the acoustic rating. We then install the plasterboard to the outside, to either side of the framed wall. We test with one layer of 10 millimeter plasterboard, and once we've done that test, we then put another layer of 10 mil plasterboard over it to see what the test rating would be with double layer. And as I mentioned earlier, we can get a 64 with one layer of 10 millimeter plasterboard, and with a second layer of 10 mil plasterboard, we get a 67 rating. It's important that when we do this walling system, one layer of 10 millimeter jib board is really important, because that is the dominant supply of plasterboard onto a building project. It saves you having to order 13 millimeter jib board, different types of thicknesses, etc., etc. So if you can order one particular type of plasterboard and know that it's going to work on these types of walls, then you're at an advantage by having reduced supply onto site and less installation issue by the building contractor in getting the right plasterboard put on the right walls. We tested, you can't hear the test for obvious reasons, but the test results with 2 layers of 10 mil plasterboard was STC 67, but the most common the most common result we get is our 64 STC with 1 layer of 10 mil standard plasterboard. That is 16% better performance than the minimum building code requirement. So you have some redundancy and really good performance for your clients or even your own projects. Probably the most critical one on a non-daily basis is fire. Now, the New Zealand Building Code clause that this relates to is what they call C1 to C6, and that's protection from fire to give a minimum fire safety requirement. The objectives are safeguard people from unacceptable risk of injury or illness caused by fire, protect other property from damage caused by fire, and allow firefighting and rescue operations to occur. So the whole idea of intertenancy walling is to protect. So you need to understand a couple of things. Now, you'll see this type of text occur on plans and specifications, and that's the FRR, and that is the fire resistance rating. And that's the ability of a building element to withstand a fire under test conditions for a certain period of time, and consists of 3 criteria. Most of the time, the FRR will have 3 numbers. Sometimes you'll see it with a dash here because it's not required. Or it'll have a dash here and a dash here, and it only requires 30 minutes stability. Our system covers stability, integrity, and insulation. So we cover all 3 parameters with our standard specification. And the stability is the ability of the element to carry an applied load. So that, for example, is the ability of the building to maintain stability during a fire. Integrity, the ability to prevent fire spreading to the non-fire side. So if your neighbor has a fire, you don't want that fire to just burn through the plasterboard and come through to your property. And the insulation. Now, this is the ability to limit the temperature rise on the non-fire side. And I'll show you that with some of the testing. This is our intertenancy wall, and this is what we want a fire to do, not get over here. All right? So much like the acoustic testing, we have a test booth, which is solid concrete, and we build our timber frame wall and the Integra panel into this wall structure. It's a full-scale wall test. We also do some additional things when we test, and that is to prove some redundancy in the system and its ability to withstand fire. So we added polyester insulation rather than pink bats or fiberglass or earth wall insulation into these spaces here, because polyester tends to not work as well in a fire situation as does fire in comparison to fiberglass or other insulation materials. So once again, we look at the walling system. It's constructed exactly the same as we did in the acoustic lab. But the thing with these, I must make a note about these brackets. Now, when we build this wall here, our proprietary brackets or specific brackets for our system are made of aluminium. And that's really important. If you make these out of galvanized metal or metals with a higher melt temperature, they don't melt. And we want them to melt. Because if these don't melt, and this is the fire over here, if these brackets don't melt, this structural load here will have an impact on this wall. So if there's a fire over here, I want all of this wall to disappear, but not affect this side. All right? Non-fire side. All right? So when I show you the test, remember this temperature here, 660 degrees. That is the temperature that the brackets melt at. When we do our test, we didn't put the framing in here or the jib board. We left this framing and jib board off, or the plasterboard off, and we put this integral walling straight into the furnace. We spoke with our fire engineers, and they said if we had timber frame and plasterboard on this side here into the furnace, they would give us another 15 to 20 minutes additional time. So we thought, we're spending a lot of money doing this test, so we won't put the framing or the plasterboard up because we have complete faith in our system. So we put this system straight into the furnace. So this wall gets pushed up against and sealed up against this edge of the furnace here. On the what we call the non-fire side, which you would imagine is your living room wall, we have pipes, as you would in a normal wall. You have where you have a sink or a kitchen, electrical outlets, and all these wires and connection points here are what we call thermocouples, and they are recording temperature in behind the plasterboard against the back directly against the face of the lightweight concrete wall, on the outside face of the plasterboard, all across the entire wall surface. So that when the furnace is underway, they data log all the temperatures. To give you an idea of what the inside of the furnace looked like, that's the temperature, 1,000 degrees. It's not a place you want to be, but if you're on the non-fire side, you'd be pretty happy to be there rather than here. Now, I talked about the thermocouples. Every one of these little boxes here is a thermocouple that is recording a temperature. Now, the important number that we look at is the average. So the average thermocouple temperature on the non-fire side is this number here. So on one side, on the fire side, I have 1,000 degrees, 980 degrees. Yet on the non-fire side, my average temperature is 66.3 degrees. So if you put your hand on that wall, you would know, well, outside of the flashing lights and sirens, you'd know there's a fire next door. But you wouldn't see flames coming through your wall. All right? So that gives you a bit of an idea of the performance. To show how impressive this test is and how hot it is in here, when we built this wall, we let it sit for 7 days before we put it into the furnace. This shows you still how much moisture is in the framing and in other components within the wall structure getting forced out of the furnace in terms of steam. The final test time that we achieved with no failure was 125 minutes. We're only required a 120-minute test, so we passed that, And then if you think back to where we were and the fire engineers, and we don't have any timber framing or plasterboard on this wall, we have even another 15 to 20 minutes maybe on top of that. So as a final result, 125 minutes, no failure. So the final result we achieved was a 120, 120, 120 fire result. I thought I'd now hand you over to Jerry from ZY Group, who you were introduced to previously.
Cool, thanks, Mike. That was awesome. Yeah, it was a very intensive test result for both fire and acoustics. So just a bit about myself and ZYJ company as an introduction. So the company itself has been running for more than 10 years. We have 3 companies underneath the group. Mainly is the ZYJ Group and ZYJ Construction and our development wing, which is the third one. Over the 3 entities, we operate more than 200 staff members and over 1,000 homes built. We operate as the developer, main contractor, and subcontractor for carpentry and concrete works. We cover commercial, residential, education, school and hospital, airport, these type of work. And we have 140 in-house carpenters. 100% New Zealand owned, and our slogan is commit to deliver. So that's just a bit of brief about our company. The reason we are here today is to be partnership with Integra and Resene Construction. It's one of the projects we developed and used the product on 100 Target Road in Greenfield. Some of the people, you probably seen a lot of our sites on the shore if you live on the shore. And this is one of the 6 units that we complete recently. Took us about 10 months to complete the project. Very difficult access, and the boys done really well. So one of the highlights in here is if you look at the picture running from the screen, the top right corner and the bottom right corner, these are the 2 photos that we used for our intertenancy wall of Integra system. So that's a real condition. You can see what the product is, the wiring around it, the roof, the ceiling patterns, and everything around it. Obviously, our builders that we interviewed before the session, they found it really, really easy to use the product. So the sequence is simply they started building one side of the wall first of all, which is the timber framing. And then once that stood up, they will start to install the Integra panels and with the mortar system. And layer by layer, they install the Integra system, the panels, and then after that, they finish with the second part of the wall. So the wall that right now you're looking at it only took 2 people no more than half a day to install. Right? The panel itself is quite lightweight. Weighs about 35 kg. So when you transport right, really, between 1 or 2 people, we recommend 2 people can install the system. The project's obviously built now and tenanted. And ever since that, we hear no complaint about the noise. Obviously, we don't have a fire yet, and finger crossed, never have a fire in the premise. But there's no complaint about noise, which is great. And every developers want to hear that. So that's a bit of the reason we're recommending the product, and we'll continue to use the product in our future developments. Yeah, thanks. Any questions? Please refer back to Lily.
Yeah. 感谢大家在直播间的这段时间，我相信这个英文的公开课对我们大部分的业内的朋友来讲，其实应该是一个比较熟悉的过程，因为新西兰非常多的 supplier 它都会提供培训这样的一个服务，也就是 online 的一些 seminar 或者是 offline 的一些线下的这种培训研讨会。所以刚刚在我们整个 Mike 的演讲过程以及 Jerry 的演讲过程中，我们其实也了解到了很多，不管是相对基础一点的 防火墙的知识。像防火墙，它顾名思义嘛，就是防火，并且在这个基础上，它又能够给我们带来比较安静的住房的环境，不受我们邻居的打扰。所以在此呢，其实我还有一个问题想要问一下 Mike。Hi Mike.
Hey.
Yeah, do you want to stop sharing the presentation so people can see your face?
Yep. I'll be
Yeah,
pleased.
I got a few questions for you.
There you go.
Yeah, I was just saying to our audience that an English seminar for people who work within the industry is not too unfamiliar because they will probably frequently get some training or like seminars. So one of my questions for you is what kind of people would be able to install your products and what kind of support or training you'll be providing to them?
Yeah. So there's two common ways that the system's installed. We obviously have a number of contractors that are familiar with the system around the country that can be engaged to install the system. But more often than not, because of the system's simplicity and timeliness of install, a lot of the building contractors are installing it themselves. Probably the primary reason for that is that we can get the materials to the site and we're not juggling days to see if another contractor can come and install it. The builder's there on site and we provide training to them. And once we've shown them how straightforward the system is, there's no stopping them. So, and it just eliminates that additional trade on site and getting a contractor back because the intertenancy walling systems are installed. One frame's done first, then the Integra starts, and then we have to wait for the next framing to be installed. So then they have to put the brackets on that. So it's definitely the way that most people are going is the main building contractor on site is doing the install.
Okay, get that. 那么 Jerry， 我想在这里也问一下您，因为您的项目有安装过这个产品，像 Resene Construction 的这个产品，我们有场外的用户在群里面问，可不可以麻烦您再用中文解释一下当时项目的进行情况以及它是否容易安装？麻烦可以请您用中文再讲解一下吗？不用，就是整个全部翻译，不好意思啊，谢谢。
That's okay， 没问题。那个这个系统其实就是像 Mike 说，它是一个很 step by step， 它一步做完一步才能做另外一步的一个系统。那么它先得做Intertenancy 里面的其中一堵墙，就是木头的 framing， 做完之后你 install 那个 clip， 然后再做 Integra 这个 panel， 这个 panel 也是一层，就是从下往上一层一层造上去，它中间是不可以有那个 penetration， 不能有洞的。然后呢，再装第二层木架木架装完之后，它再把那个 bracket 锁上去，就完完全全是一个比较就 dummy proof 的一个系统吧，它是不需要太多的。但是当时我们因为是第一次，我们现场的 builder 他第一次用这个系统，所以也是请了这个Resene Construction 他们的现场 technician 来做一个指导，做一个指导，但是很快的他们就学会了，然后就安装了。然后当时也碰到那个下雨的情况下雨的情况它也是完全可以安装的，没有太大问题，这是比较我们推荐的一个点在这里。
好的，没问题。Okay, Mike. So I got another question for you. Can this wall be used for steel framing?
Yes, it can. Yeah, they're tested for both timber frame and steel framing.
That's great. And another question we have is there's someone who probably is doing a project. They're asking that council has required acoustic report. And if this happens, what would be the best solution for? And who would be the person to conduct the assessment for this project?
Okay, so we are on our website. Do you want me to share the website just to show everyone where they can get that information?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
You see that now?
Yeah.
So on our website, under construction systems, if you come over to our intertenancy systems, It will give you the intertenancy system. You can simply click on the view specifications. It gives you all the details in different formats, master spec and our general specifications. But down here under useful documents, excuse me, we have our acoustic opinions, our brands appraisals, fire summary test reports, acoustic reports. All of the information is in there for your engineers, your acoustic engineers to review when they're designing your projects. All right. So all of the information is held within. We don't hide our testing information. You will actually, if you click on our fire test report, I'll give you the entire test report, and I'll tell you exactly what it did. We don't cut the detail and all that sort of stuff. We're very transparent with the information that we have, and you'll get a full test report, when it was done, how it was done, all the information. All right. So there's no secrets, but the acoustic engineers, they can find this information, or you can assist them with that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. 所以 Mike 刚刚讲了，如果我们有朋友需要这个 acoustic report 的话，其实他们的网站上各种产品的报告以及测试的结果都是可以非常简单的就找到的，并且呢，在今天我们直播结束之后呢，我们他们公司 Resene Construction 的 brochure， 也就是产品的手册，也有中文的版本即将发布。我们会通过我们群聊的方式，给想要去获得今天这个 presentation slides 以及他们产品中文手册的朋友们一份比较好的这种 share 的方式。Okay, Mike, there's another question for you that's asking during the on the right-hand side of your screen from a guy called Dylan Huang. He is one of the director of Archiland. And he's asking how the builder think of using mortar since they're usually good at carpentry.
I was just typing reply, Dylan. That at the end of the day, most builders have a cordless drill, and they need a mixing paddle that fits into the cordless drill, and a mixing bucket, and they always have water. So mixing up the plaster is very straightforward. Mixing up some plaster to apply on the joins of the panels is not a overly onerous task, and it's very straightforward. I would probably be more concerned if you were asking me if a builder could plaster a wall flat. Then I'd probably have a different discussion with you.
This is a very technical question, so I hope Dylan got answered for that.
Is that okay, Dylan?
Yeah, he said thanks, so must be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got one more question for you, and this is also about installation. One of the person in the group chat asked how to seal the firewall and the roof. So yeah. I assume it's an installation question.
Yeah. So we at the vertical ends of the walls and along the entire perimeter of the firewall requires fire stopping, and there's multiple products on the market that are available to achieve that. We are introducing a specific firewall for our system, which will be arriving in February next year, as long as all the ships get going. But and that's rated to 1100 degrees Celsius. We've done something special with our firewall. Or a couple of things. We've cut it to width, so it's already cut to 100 millimeters wide, so it tucks in around the panel and into the cavity. And we've also made it in two thicknesses. We've done a 25 millimeter thick version, and we've also done a 50 millimeter thick version. The reason we've done a 50 millimeter thick version is on the roof line. You normally have a slightly larger gap than you will on the vertical face. Up the external wall corners, and we just wanted to have that variance there to allow you to do the install a lot easier.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, 刚刚 Mike 的意思其实也是讲，他们将会引入一个新的产品，跟我们的防火墙会有一个更好的配合的这样的一个作用，也会让学会使用的朋友们会觉得这是一个比较简单、容易上手安装的。So Mike, I have one last inquiry before the webinar goes to the end. I do see there are a few people come in the webinar a bit later during the time. So would you mind to play the video at the start of your presentation one more time? Just sort of like give them a better impression if they haven't experienced that themselves.
Yeah. And just one quick thing. One thing we don't sort of touch on is the size of these panels.
Yeah.
Now, these panels are 2.2 meters long and they're 50 millimeters thick and they're 600 deep. So every panel you're installing 1.332 square meters of wall area. So as Jerry mentioned earlier, half a day to do, what was that, 50 to 60 square meters of intertenancy, Jerry? So it's a very fast system. Now, if you look closely, you'll see they're handling a couple of panels. And at the very beginning of this video, you will actually see the actual panels. They're stacked underneath a big white wrapper. So am I up again?
Hi there, Peter Wolfkamp, resident builder, and today I've come out to site to have a look at some of the new innovations from Resene Construction Systems. If you look around, you can see that this type of multi-dwelling construction is going to become more and more commonplace, and a critical part of building right next to each other is protecting one dwelling from the other. And in this instance, the central barrier intertenancy system is a critical element of how we're going to be building in the future. This system is beautiful in its simplicity. So there are essentially four elements. There is the Integra AAC panel, the mortar, the clips, and the screws. Systems like this are designed for two important functions. One is their fire rating, the other is their acoustic performance. This system here has been independently tested by brands in terms of its fire rating and has achieved a minimum 2-hour fire protection. The other critical element is its acoustic performance. Testing done at Auckland University has indicated that this system achieves an STC rating of 64 and can achieve a rating of up to 67. That far exceeds the minimum requirements of the building code, which is an STC rating of 55. It's great to see this project nearing completion, and it's really good to know that the critical functions of fire protection and acoustic isolation achieved by the Resene Construction Systems central barrier intertenancy system will serve these owners for years to come. For more information, go to reseneconstruction.co.nz.
Thank you, Mike. That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just want to say, adding to that video and how efficiently the whole thing installs. I think from anyone, whether you're a main contract builder or developer, you want a system that does perform, also have that efficiency behind you. I think we just want to touch base in Chinese. 就这个产品，它是可以在就是任何天气环境下安装。就对于开发商来讲，对于建商来讲。我们想要的是这个工作的效率，对，所以我们对这个一些东西的，我们对这个产品它本身能不能在雨天天气下安装是有一些考量，那么这个东西是可以的，所以这一点是要着重说明一下啊。
OK， 好的，非常感谢 Jerry，Thanks Mike。不知不觉，其实这也是相当于一节 lecture 的时间就这么过去了啊。本节公开课，其实说实话，我觉得 technical 的东西还是比较多的，可能对某些屋主的朋友们相对来讲会有一点点难懂。但是我希望不管是您是建筑行业的从业者，还是对建筑行业比较感兴趣的，就是我们普通的屋主朋友们，都能够帮您带来一些真正的知识上的分享。 然后我们今天本期的 PPT 以及文中的中文产品的手册，我们也会在公开课的交流群内进行一个分享。在这里，我们也希望用户朋友们可以积极的进群去参加抽奖。我们本期的问题是在防火系数的测试中，在没有着火那一侧的平均温度是多少？在这里我可以偷偷告诉大家，正确答案呢是66度。如果您有认真的观看，并且也在群内的话，希望您可以获得这个得到100元生鲜达代金券的机会。所以为了给所有观看直播的朋友们一个相对公平的抽奖机会啊，我们会在直播结束半小时之后在群内去提问。如果您知道答案，千万不要错过抢答这个问题的机会。在公开课的最后呢，作为主持人的我还是要提醒一下大家，一定要点击关注主播，这样您就可以持续关注未来的其他公开课。本周四下午3点钟，德国5金件的制造商海蒂诗将会为您带来关于厨房卫浴、衣橱等等省空间的黑科技分享，为您和您的项目和爱家带来新的灵感。记得周四下午3点钟继续收看我们的节目。那么今天的公开课就先到这里。Thanks Mike and Jerry for your time and great presentation. 大家晚安，我们下期不见不散。Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
谢谢，拜拜。